What are we talking about today?
Habits.
Habits and how they control our
Sorts
lives.
of things about habits.
Say that again.
I said all sorts of things about habits.
And how
Good,
they
the
control
bad,
our
and the
lives.
ugly, right?
Everything.
Everything.
That's the thing with habits. They're not all bad.
No, they're not. They're definitely not.
Just the bad habits are bad.
Yeah, and I actually think I'm pretty good at building good habits. Bad habits, maybe not so much.
Well, this show's got 3 parts. We're going to talk about how habits, I was going to say ruin our lives, how habits run our lives.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about some of our habits.
Okay.
And then we're going to give some hints and tips on how to build and change your habits. And give you some really easy, simple tips too. Because habits are difficult to break. They are difficult to change. You know, our whole lives is based on habits.
Yeah, I think that the more deep-rooted that habit is, the longer you've been doing it, the harder it's going to be to change.
Well, it goes back to basic survival as children.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we learned something. It didn't kill us.
Mm-hmm.
Do it again.
Yep.
It didn't kill us. Do it again. And we improve. And then we find things we enjoy. I enjoyed that. Do it again. I enjoyed that.
Right.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Until it becomes second nature, until it moves from our conscious mind to our subconscious mind, and then we lose all control over it.
Yeah.
We don't even know we're doing it.
Yeah.
The perfect example is getting in a car and driving a car. First time we do it, we got to think about pressing the accelerator, pressing the brake, changing the gear, listening, doing everything. And it takes all of our concentration. You cannot sit there and think about what you're going to have for tea.
Right.
Or even have the radio on or anything in the first 2 or 3 lessons can you hear the kids outside playing?
No.
No, that's fine. If you can, it's great. I just love hearing kids in the background anyway. But you literally cannot do anything other than drive.
Yeah, right.
And then 3 months after you've passed your test and all that, you're in the car, you've got your music on, you shouldn't be, but the amount of people that are texting and on their phones, or they're rolling a cigarette, eating a hamburger, all different things. And then they get home, they walk in the door, and their partner says to them, "How was the drive home?" "What drive home?" "Oh, yeah, I can't remember driving the last 10 miles.
Oh, yeah.
Just autopilot on, our subconscious mind.
It is. And that's what a habit is. It's something that's like a regular tendency. It's like settled. You do it over and over and over again. It's repetitious every day. It's an everyday.
And it's triggered. And it's constant triggers. This is the key with habits. We think they're based in us, but they're not. They're completely, the subconscious mind is looking for these triggers constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it reacts to every one of those triggers. You don't lie in bed in the morning and start changing gears or pressing your foot on the accelerator.
Yeah.
It's when you get in the car, the subconscious mind goes, we're in a car.
It's time to turn on the lights.
Yeah. Light up a cigarette, get into a pub.
Oh, yeah. Well,
whatever we're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like every habit, whether it's good or bad, has a 3-step pattern. You've already hit 2 of them. And I haven't told them to you. The reminder, which is that thing that triggers the behavior, a routine, which I mentioned, it's something, an action you do every day, and the reward, the benefit you get for doing that behavior, because it doesn't become a habit without that reward.
See, that's interesting, the benefit. Mm-hmm. So what is the benefit of the most mundane, everyday things we do every day? What is it? Well, I was going to say, what's the benefit of getting dressed? Clearly, in my case, it's a benefit. And everybody
staying warm is number 1 for me.
Okay, I'm trying to think of something else that doesn't necessarily have benefit. But no, I guess they do. They all have a benefit somewhere.
Yeah.
And then once they become habit, it's just part of our everyday life. The way we walk to work, everything we do. I've got carers that look after me.
Yeah.
And I clearly live in a house. And cleaning the house, every single carer does it completely different.
Yeah.
Now, then they don't always get to the same result, but essentially they get to a standard result of what they deem done. And it's different to mine. It's different to, And they all have several degrees of this. But they all do things differently. And it's purely, nobody's wrong.
Oh, no, yeah. Yeah.
You know, right down to just brushing up. You would think there'd be one way to brush up. There's not. Seriously. I've watched a lot of carers over my time, and there's a lot of ways of brushing up. Trust me. Or not, as the case may be. But we bring those habits everywhere we go with us. And they are literally 98, 99% of our day.
Yeah.
But the main reason why we have habits is because literally you would not be able to function without them. You imagine if you had to sit there now and go, I need to balance. I need to hold my hand a certain way. I need to hold my head a certain way. I need to move my lips, move my tongue. I need to do all these things in a certain way just to get a word out.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got to do all the other bodily functions and you've got to concentrate and focus on everything. You would seriously, you'd just blow your mind.
You wouldn't be able to function if your brain didn't automate all that stuff.
It's got to offload some stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if literally every time we got in the car, we had to focus on every little bit, every single time we never learned as a habit, we just wouldn't be able to do most of what we do in life.
Yeah.
It's not a human thing. Animals have habits and everything.
Well, and that's also the secret to getting good at something is making it a habit, like playing the guitar. Like, I know I could be a much better guitar player if I sat and played every single day.
Yeah.
And made it to where it just became a habit.
Yeah. That book by the Outlier.
I work so hard at it.
Say that again.
Instead of having to work so hard at it.
Yeah. It's the habit that's more important. We'll go on to that in the third part when we're building habits. But I read the book, The Outliers by, I cannot remember now. I will put a link to it in the.
I want to say Carl. Oh, shoot. I know which book you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm going to just pause it a sec. And there's a really good book by Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers, The Story of Success. I read it a few years ago. And what he basically says is that he looks at what makes someone successful. And is it a born talent? I think that was the main question he was asking. Is it born talent? And I'll do a spoiler. It's not. If you read the book, you'll realize he comes up with so many reasons why it's not a born talent. But what he does come to the conclusion of is if you do like 2,000 hours at anything, you'll become really good at it. If you do 4,000 hours, you'll become a teacher in it. Yeah. If you do 6,000 hours, you might become the best in your country. You might win a medal. You might become your country's champion. If you do 8,000 hours, and this isn't arbitrary, it isn't guaranteed, but in general, if you do about 8,000 hours, you might win the Olympic gold or the equivalent. But if you do 10,000 hours, you become an outlier. Yeah. And an outlier is someone that excels in whatever they did decade after decade. So they win like 4 or 5 gold medals at the Olympics.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what he says. And it makes perfect sense. But there's also another video on YouTube, which is really impressive too. There's a guy that wanted to play the ukulele. And he wondered, how many hours would it take before you become good at something? But then your improvement reduces significantly based on the time you're doing it. And he comes to the conclusion of 20 or 21 hours, I believe. Yeah. And it's quite surprising. And people say, well, that's just a day. Well, you take anything. You pick up a guitar, as you can play a guitar, so you can appreciate this probably. And you play it for 1 hour a day for 21 days. Yeah. You're going to become relatively good. You might not be able to play any song that comes your way, but you're going to be able to play chords, and you'll be able to play it in front of somebody well enough that they're not going to look at you and laugh. Right. And after that, you improve, but you're not going to get between the first hour and 20 hours again in the next 20 hours. So I cannot even remember where that was going.
Well, what's that based off of? Because I don't really feel that at all. Like in my experience, it's been the opposite. Like the better I get something, the more I improve with it. Like there's less learning curve.
So we're in agreement. Did I explain it really badly?
I don't know. I thought it meant like you'd get to a certain point where your improvement would slow down.
Yeah. Yeah, basically after 20 or 21 hours,
yeah. See,
your improvement slows down drastically.
So what's that based off of?
I'll put a link to the YouTube video. It's a really awesome YouTube video. He really goes into the science behind it and everything like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
It's a really awesome video. And it makes perfect sense between the Outliers book and that video that there is a definite curve dropping off, diminished results, they call it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with dieting or anything.
Yeah. I would just think it'd be so much farther down the road.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Everybody does. The whole point is your brain will adapt and learn, because when you go from nothing to learning something, it doesn't take much to do it.
Yeah.
Go back to the driving the car. You can learn to drive a car relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And that's like 80% of becoming a racing car driver is knowing how to drive the car. The other 20% is earned in the next 8,000 hours.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah.
Well, when you really dig deep and you spend hours and hours and hours, that's when you're perfecting it. Most people can go and play a guitar after a few weeks and jam with a few friends. But to become good that you can go on open mic like you do and things like that, how many years have you been doing it?
Oh, a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I did it for a long time. I did it for a while. And then I put it down and didn't do it for a long, long time. And then I started doing it again. And then I started getting more serious about it and doing it more. And if I go out to a couple open mics a week, I get better. If I only go out once a week, I'm trying to keep up with, I'm losing it, Yeah.
But you never go back to square one.
No, you never go back to square one.
But you'll go back to a place where you're okay.
Yeah.
You never forget how to ride a bike. You never forget.
Exactly.
It becomes a fundamental part of the brain, which is one of the most awesome things. Is we now know the brain is not.
Yeah.
You're not born with a specific size and shape brain, and that's it for life.
Yeah. I just think I think it's much more multi-dimensional than that. Like, I don't think it's as simple as like you get to this basic level really quickly and then you spend the next 20 years perfecting it. I think within that 20 years, there are so many different levels that like you can't even comprehend if you're not doing it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's true with everything. Like there's, degrees of skill that you can build up, like the race car driver. Like you're not going to go straight from being able to basically drive a car to being a race car driver. You're going to learn to drive defensively. You're going to learn to drive quickly. There's going to be all these levels. You're going to build up your common sense, your gut instincts, all the stuff that it takes.
Absolutely.
It's like super.
And you actually grow those parts of the brain to enable you to do those things, the quick reactions. Your eyesight becomes better. Your the speed between your brain and your hands and your feet will become better, become shorter.
Yeah.
It finds shortcuts.
Yeah.
There is certain things that, if you're 6'3", you're not going to become a jockey.
Yeah.
It's not good for the horses.
Yeah.
And one thing Malcolm found in his book as well is circumstances do play a part.
They do, yeah.
If you're from a very poor area that has no computers, you're not going to become Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Bill Gates was going along to his local university and spending evenings for years on the computers.
Yeah.
circumstances enabled him to build up to that one night where apparently in the few weeks he wrote DOS and become famous overnight.
Yeah.
The Beatles become famous overnight, apparently, but they didn't, because they played in the clubs and the cabarets in Germany for years.
Yeah.
But people see the sudden success and think it's born talent.
Yeah, no. It's like a ladder. I see it like not a ladder, like stairs. Just stairs that go on forever.
And one of the most interesting studies is, have you ever heard of, about every 10 years, I don't know how many countries do it, but we do it in this country. And I read an article on the BBC about 3 years ago. And it was questioning whether or not we should praise our children for the work they do, or praise them for the work they put in. So do we praise the end result, or do we praise the work they put in? And in the article, they spoke about these, I can't remember, they're 50-somethings or 60-somethings now. But it was the first generation that was able to have brain scans when they were children, and every 10 years subsequent. So it's the first group of people that were studied, lifelong studies, they call them, that they were able to look at the brain at 30 and look at the brain at when they were born and see whether the brain had changed.
Yeah.
And out of that, they looked at, in particular, piano players and musicians.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because that is very largely seen as a born talent. You have a creative gene or something. And it's understandable why people see that, because normally you come from a very musical family, your family listen to music, and you sit down and jam with them. So I can understand the reasoning behind it. But what they found especially the piano ones, they had a rather large part of the brain which done the hand and eye and hearing coordination.
Yeah.
I might have that slightly wrong, but there was a larger part of the brain which controlled the playing the piano, basically.
Yeah.
I'm not a neurologist. And they thought, well, maybe there is a born talent. So they looked back through the decades of scans, and it wasn't there when they were born.
Yeah.
And the ones that did not start until early 20s, it did not grow until in their 30s. Yeah. It wasn't there when they were born. It wasn't there when they were 10. It wasn't there when they were 20.
Yeah.
But the ones that started at 2 or 3 years old, it was already growing at the age of 10.
Right. Yeah.
So they now know whatever you do, your brain will grow.
Yeah.
And change to adapt to what you do. So there's no such thing as saying I'm no good at maths.
Yeah.
What you basically say is I don't do maths, so therefore my brain is not going to adapt to be a mathematician. And I think this is an amazing study, because for the first time we can actually look at our kids and go, wow, you've earned that. Instead of it was given to you.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I should try to find that article really and put a link to it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That was quite a long story, was it? Let me pause this a minute. Okay. It's so hard to go back to where I was thinking. So after the study, what they found out about the born talent and about these kids in the end was the fact that the kids that I looked at my daughter differently, and I started praising her for the work she put in purely because of this study. I always used to say to her, wow, you're an amazing artist. Look at the paintings and all that you're doing. And what this study found is the ones that they praised the work that they put in and they rewarded the work-based, their results were 40% higher than the ones that they praised the end result. So well done, you've done well in your exam, well done, the picture's great. Whereas the other ones, they didn't ignore the end, but they said, look, see all that work you put in, here's your reward for the work.
Yeah.
And it is to do with the work you put into anything.
Definitely, yeah.
As opposed to sitting there and, wow, I've got this talent and I don't need to work at it.
Yeah. No, see, that's the thing. You could be super talented at something, but if you're not motivated to do it, you're not going to do it. And that is more self-motivating, gives them the autonomy to be motivated. Like my daughter, I don't ever, push her about grades. I don't go all like, oh my God, you got A's, woo. I always tell her that is like when she's having a hard time, I say, well, as long as you're trying your best and you're working as hard as you can, that's what matters. And when she's doing well, I'm just like, look, all your hard work paid off.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I was at school, I had a real belief that all my friends had the academic gene. They were all, because some of my friends were the head boy and things like that. I had a real mix of friends, right, from the bottom to the top. It depended on how I felt at the time. But I always used to think that they had the genetic makeup to do well at school, to do well in exams. But it wasn't until, I don't know, it was literally in the past 10 years, I think, that I looked back at what they were doing and I realized, well, wait a minute. When I was out playing, when I was out doing everything on the evenings, they were home doing their homework. And when I would call for them, they would say, no, he's busy. He's doing his work. He's doing his work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that went over 5 years and 3 evenings a week and they done 2 hours work per week, they put 1,500, 1,800 more hours into school than I did.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, really, to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is.
So yeah, it comes down to, and the habit is what's important. We're talking about the habit.
Yeah, and motivation is important with that too, because I mean, like we all have like a bad habit that we know we shouldn't do, but there's something about it that rewards us and makes us feel good, makes us want it, and our motivation is not going to be the same all the time. Like it might be 95% one day, it might be 5% the next day, it might even change within the same day. It ebbs and flows. Which is why tackling one of those big ones is so hard. And actually, that would be my one tip, is just to start with easy things that you're highly motivated to do and just get good at changing your habits.
Yeah. The habit is everything. You can take down a whole mountain by one step at a time. They don't jump up to the top of Mount Everest. It's one bit at a time.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever you do, you don't build a house by just dropping the house. You do it by one brick at a time.
Yeah.
And it's the habit. You'd be surprised how quickly you can build a house just by turning up every morning and dropping 2 bricks and going home again.
Yeah.
And it's the same as building our Facebook pages. Mine and yours, we both got a Facebook page. And the habit of posting on there every single day, even if it only takes 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
It's so beneficial.
It is. It is.
It's so beneficial. And this podcast, it's not always easy to get it out every single week.
Yeah.
But the habit of doing it so people know where we're to and we're coming up every single week.
Yeah.
And you saying about motivation, there's a Jim Ryan quote: motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. So many people, you're motivated to go to the gym. You're motivated to go on a diet, to eat healthily, to do all these other things.
Yeah.
3 days later, it's like, I haven't actually seen huge results. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You've got to be motivated to do it every day. So you've got to figure out what you got to ask yourself some deep questions and figure out why are you really wanting to do this, so you can remind yourself every day. Because if it's just like, oh, I want to go to the gym so I can get in shape, so I can look good in my red dress. Well, how important is like just that one time, that one experience wearing the red dress? Is that really what's going to motivate you? Or is it, like, I want to feel better about myself each day?
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on. And it's having that why and visualizing ourselves when everything is good and done in 3-4 months' time.
Yeah, yeah. Like I gave up, I went vegetarian about, I guess it's probably about 2.5 months now. I've done super, super well with it. I didn't make it too difficult. I said I'm going to allow myself to have seafood, cheese, eggs, and occasionally treat myself to meat. I did that once, and then I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. And I didn't give myself a hard time about it. But I've every day like gone on my way to think of, okay, what new thing can I try? Because I want to do it to make myself feel better, be healthier. So yesterday I made kale and fruit smoothies for the first time. I've never put kale in anything, and it was good. It was super healthy.
Tastes nice.
Yeah.
I do buy my green drinks, pressed green drinks.
Yeah.
Because every time I tried making them myself, I'll just leave it as they do not taste too good.
Yeah. I just
They're
threw
disgusting.
like I must have put 8 different kinds of fruit in there, and it was like 3 berries. So it was super berry, and it was purple. It wasn't green.
My experience of juicing myself is I get a juicer. This is all rolled up my sleeves, buy the loads of veg and all that. We start throwing it in the juicer, and it comes out, and we drink it. Yeah, this is really nice. And don't touch it again. So I do buy mine now. I will be honest.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I was going to go back to. What you said. Talking about good and bad habits, because we all have good and bad habits. What would you say is... No, that's shite. So let's talk about how we build habits, good habits.
Yeah, you said you had some tips for us.
I have, and it's really important. Loads of people want to know the answer to how do I get rid of my bad habits?
Yeah.
Well, the idea of getting rid of your bad habits is have so many good habits that your bad habits haven't got time to happen.
Yeah, like replace them with good habits.
If you're running, you cannot be drinking and smoking.
Right.
If you're doing all the other fitness things, if you're eating 3 decent meals a day, you haven't got time, or you haven't got a meal to eat, the takeaway or...
Yeah.
And the one thing I've learned about developing good habits is do it slowly.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've been talking about habits is everything. So the first thing, if you want to do 300 sit-ups a day, don't come out the gate and do 300 sit-ups.
Yeah.
Because you won't get up the next day. You might survive 2 days, and 3rd day in, you would have given up.
Yeah,
First
definitely.
day, do 1 sit-up. 2nd day, do 1 sit-up, and do it for 7 days. And then for the next 7 days, do 2 sit-ups. Next 7 days, do 3 sit-ups. And then up until the end of the month, until you get to a point where you cannot literally get on with your day until you've done those sit-ups.
Yeah.
So build it up to 10, 20. And you may think, well, it's not very many, 10, 20. Well, if you do 10 every day, that's 70 a week. That's 70 more than you've done your whole life.
Right. Yeah.
And every week, that's 280 sit-ups per month. But you've now got a habit.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like building it up slowly, taking that time to do it is like the essence of building a habit. You can't fast track it. You can't.
No. And that habit is more important than what the actual deal is.
Exactly.
The next tip is tie it to something. We are triggered by, like we were saying at the very beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
You're triggered by something. When you get in the car, you're triggered to do something. When you get in bed, you're triggered to start racing your mind and stay away. That's what happens to most people.
Yeah.
But we're triggered by everything. So trigger the sit-ups to something.
Yeah.
So perhaps you cannot do your teeth until you've done those sit-ups.
Yeah.
And then at some point you won't be able to do those sit-ups without doing your teeth.
Yeah.
And it's also remembering that after a while, the results will start going down. You won't end up with, especially like eating healthy and doing things like that, you won't end up losing the same weight. You won't end up feeling as good. That's okay. Because the body has this bounce back time.
Yeah.
Everything has, and the mind will play tricks. It will turn around and go, oh, okay, let's try this habit. A few days later, it'll go, yeah, I'll humor you.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, it goes, yeah, this is really boring. Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, just don't do it one day. Lie in bed.
Yeah.
And it'll play all those tricks with you
Mm-hmm.
until in the end, it'll give up and go, well, okay, if that's what you really want to do, because you're breaking 40, 30 years of doing one thing.
Yeah.
Subconscious mind doesn't like that.
Yeah. No, I find it's much easier to kind of add something to something that already exists. That's how I got myself to meditate every day. I get up, I do whatever I need to do, and then I make my cup of coffee, and then I meditate with my coffee.
Yeah, exactly. But start it slow. Meditate you're better off meditating for 1 minute or 2 minutes every morning.
Oh, yeah.
Than you are 2 hours every 2 weeks.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
I think in podcast 2 or 3, we were talking about building a habit meditation.
Yeah.
And it's so important to little and often with any habit, pretty much.
Yeah. If you can't do it every day, you're taking off too much.
Yeah. And you've always got extra time. If it's important to you, you will find the time.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I want to bust that myth of 21 days.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I want to bust that myth because it came about in a book that I'm currently reading, actually. I'm reading it again, Psycho-Cybernetics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where he got it from. It was wrote in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he said, or got it from somewhere, that if you do something for 21 days, that gives you the best chance of continuing. He didn't say it takes 21 days. But actual studies at university suggest the minimum is about 60 to 70 days.
That makes more sense to me. Yeah, I would have guessed 60 days.
And some people, it takes up to 300.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you think how many times we're getting out of the car, how many times we've cleaned our teeth and doing those things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It just makes sense.
And let's say you're trying to break a bad habit. How many hours have you spent doing that bad habit every day?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to turn all that around. That's a lot.
I'd give up smoking. I remember when I smoked for a long time, I always used to say, I can give up any time. I could do it.
Yeah.
There I was still smoking, clearly.
Right. It's easier to say.
But the 2 times I gave up, I gave up recently because I started smoking again. But the first time I gave up was about 12 years ago now. And I've been smoking since about 13, 14.
Yeah.
I didn't give up. I made a decision for myself to give up, and I wasn't giving up for nobody else.
Yeah, that's important.
It's really important. Do it for yourself.
Yeah.
It's got to come from within. If it's coming from somebody else, it just doesn't work as well. It's against the odds. But I didn't give up forever.
Yeah.
I gave up for 1 hour at a time.
Yeah.
So every time I wanted a cigarette, I'd say I'd have one in an hour's time.
Yeah.
2 days later, I'll have one in an hour's time. And I believe I read recently it was the same way Alcoholics Anonymous in their 12 steps. Or what they suggest is you do not give up drinking for life. You just give up today.
Yep.
So that's one. I know we weren't going to talk about bad habits so much, but that's the way of breaking bad habits. But replace them.
Yeah.
If you're going to give up smoking, don't sit there and think about the cigarette.
Yeah. Do something else.
Replace it with a good one. Feel good about it. Exercise.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned it about having like a what if scenario.
Oh, yeah. So like, okay, hang on a second. Okay, yeah, so that was a technique that I read about when I was reading about how to stick to your long-term goal when your life just kind of gets chaotic. And basically it's to plan for that chaos because we know that's how life is. Life gets crazy on us right when we don't need it. So basically you kind of have a plan, like if something unexpected happens, then this will be my response. So for example, Let's see. If I can't make it to yoga during my lunch break, then I'll take a stretching break this afternoon. So it's like a little backup plan to make sure you accomplish your goal.
Yeah. And it's also really important to, if you don't do it one day or 1 week or whatever your new habit you're forming is, you don't go back to square one by missing one time.
Right. No. Yeah.
You're not starting all over again.
Yeah.
You know, very often, and diet's the easiest one to, because it's,
oh yeah,
you know,
like,
I lost about 2.5 stone
mm-hmm.
about 4 years ago. And even me being in a wheelchair, I feel better about myself. I can move around better and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I lost it through just eating less. I was still eating all like famous takeaways and things like that, but I was eating less and becoming really conscious of what I was eating. And I was counting all my calories. So I become aware.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Become aware of your habit.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And now I don't have to jot down all my calories. I can pretty well tell you how many calories I've ate most days within reason.
Yeah.
I'm not really crazy about it. I'm not like, oh, I got to eat another 6 calories.
Yeah.
But I know roughly within 200 or 300 calories what I ate one day and whether or not I should go easy with my tea.
Yeah.
So it's about building a knowledge and awareness of what's going on within, what's going on.
Yeah. And I think even especially with dieting, setting yourself up for success. If you break your diet and you're going to beat yourself up, you're more likely to quit. But you use this if then thing and you just say, okay, if I have something unhealthy for lunch, that's fine. I can do that. I'm allowed to do that. But I'm going to cook a really healthy meal for dinner. You make amends with it.
And the other thing with dieting is don't just get out of bed one day and go, right, I'm going to eat healthy the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Just start eating a healthy breakfast until that becomes a habit.
Oh yeah.
And
I still treat myself
until that becomes a habit.
Yeah, I still treat myself. I'm not trying to avoid treating myself, but I'm developing really good, healthy eating habits.
Yeah.
And I feel better.
And I think it's really important to be able to treat ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
You have a healthy relationship with it. I'm not talking about if it's drugs or alcohol or things like that. They're a little different.
Yeah.
Because we get addicted to those kind of things. And eating, we get addicted to the pleasure of eating because it's a comfort and survival thing.
Yeah.
However, some of the less addictive things, sometimes it's easier not to block them out completely.
Oh, yeah.
And eating is a prime example. Become aware of what you're eating. Don't become so many people, and I've witnessed it around me, where they go from eating all sorts to eating a strict chicken and whole grain rice diet.
And then back
and within
again.
3 weeks, they're so fed up that, yes, they've lost 6 pounds or 8 pounds.
Yeah.
And they're really pleased with that. But they're so fed up with their lives.
Yeah.
They've got to go back to the one thing that they were enjoying.
Yeah, well, I think anything taken to an extreme is never going to be good for you.
No.
I mean, I used to have a really bad problem with eating like sugar all the time, like candies and candy bars and, like desserts. And just like if they were around, I would eat them up. And I tried just like giving them up, not buying them, not having them in the house. And I craved them like crazy. So I decided to say, okay, you know what? It's going to be a treat. I'm going to have them occasionally to reward myself. When I feel like I deserve to be rewarded, I'll go out and get myself a treat. Yeah. And I enjoy them more now, honestly.
So to recap on how we form habits, set a goal, visualize our goal.
Oh yeah.
Live in that person already.
Yeah.
Live your life as if you're already that person that you want to be living your life.
Yeah.
Start it slowly. Build the habit and not the actual commitment so much.
Yeah.
One press up once a week and build it up weekly to the second week is better than 300 press ups.
Oh yeah. I mean, really, what is commitment? It's habit. It's a habit.
Yeah. And we're using our subconscious mind for our gain instead of it using us.
Yeah.
And don't see it as the rest of your life. Just see it as if you're giving up a bad habit just today.
Yeah.
Just today. I just don't have to drink today. And like you say, reward ourselves. Reward ourselves. It's really important because most of these habits are about reward anyway.
They are. That's why it's so important. Even if you're rewarding your, like, let's say I really had to give up sugar because I was diabetic and I absolutely couldn't have it. I could reward myself with something else. Like, I don't have an example off the top of my head, but just something I really would like and really enjoy would make me feel good. Yeah. It would be a nice replacement. Do that instead.
Yeah. I remember when I first gave up smoking, I turned to ginger nuts.
Yeah.
I was unaware over 3 years what it would do to me otherwise. So I had to form another habit to. But anyway, that's different. But that was better than the other habit.
Oh, yeah.
It's not to be down on yourselves.
Yeah.
So we're going to change the way we're doing our podcast a little bit, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
We're going to do them as seasons. So we have a 10-slot season, and then we're going to have a month break, and then another 10-slot season. And we're going to do, this is our 9th one, and next week will be our 10th one. What are we doing next week about?
Oh, I believe we were going to do expectations.
Expectations and stories.
Yeah. Of
how we expect life to be. And how much pain and drama it causes us.
Yes.
How much of a nightmare we cause for ourselves just through those, my story and my expectations.
I actually have a song about it now, come to think of it.
Oh, good. Perhaps we can have that as the closing of this season.
Yeah, we haven't done that.
That would be good. That would be good. And then next season, whole 10 episodes is going to be about relationships.
Yes.
And we're going to look at relationships from the inside, from the outside, relationships not only between partners, but between families. So it's a great time to subscribe. It's a great time to review us, to bookmark us. And if you can support us, head over to Patreon and become one of our patrons, where you can see our videos. You can see, where we pause it and just where we all go wrong and things like that.
Or just like start talking about something else in the middle of the podcast.
And then remember we're doing a podcast. Or one of us says something and the other one looks at each other and goes, what? I do that all the time. I just sit here and like, I got nothing to say to that.
It happens.
So where can they find you, Susan?
Susan'sInspirationSpace.com.
And you can find me at stephenwebb.com. If you can, head over to Patreon, become one of our patrons. We'll call you out on the next show. Really appreciate it. Take care. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks.